Hello, and welcome to Handmade by Hallie. Glad to see you. I've got a new project for you today. We'll start with this wood pumpkin from Walmart, these 3 tin pumpkins from the Dollar Tree, then this piece of paper I got, I believe, from Hobby Lobby, and some Mod Podge and a paintbrush, some white Waverly paint and a paintbrush, some ribbon to coordinate, some scissors. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a piece of paper and trace with my finger those raised sections of this wood pumpkin. After I get this done, I'm going to then trace with my pencil those shapes so that I can cut those out later. So if you are enjoying this video and my content, I would greatly appreciate it if you do all those things. The smashing the like button, the following, and subscribing. Next, I'm going to take that white paint from Waverly and I'm going to paint this pumpkin. Right now the original color is a little bit of off-white, and I decided to go with these gray tin pumpkins that this one needed to be white. And this takes about 2 coats of the white, and because it's the chalk paint, it tends to dry pretty quickly, especially since I've got a fan on in the background. So just get that all painted and then set that aside. Next, I'm going to take the bows off of these pumpkins and pull off the small pumpkin and pull the medium pumpkin to the front. This next part, I'm going to use the pattern I made to go on the raised parts and cut that out with the paper. And I decided I wanted to use that word thankful. So I just line those up together and hold it as I cut. Just taking time to get those as close to the pattern that I traced as I can. I will end up going to have to go back in there and trim each of those sections up a little bit closer once we get it onto the pumpkin. So that's what I'm going to do now, is make sure those pieces all fit as best as I can get them. And I have to use the needle nose pliers to hold those pieces of paper down since my fan keeps blowing them off. And I just take my time and make sure they all fit kind of inside each of those sections. Going back and forth and trimming just a little bit here and there until we get them all done. So this is an added step I wasn't planning on originally doing. So I decided I wanted to add some black edges to the pumpkin, both on the raised sections and around the main part. And I'm just taking the edge of my brush and kind of doing the dry brush method and getting really the edges of the raised section. And then I will go around the edges of the front of the pumpkin and then around the sides, kind of making it look like the paint's chipped off and worn. So I decided that this would be just add a little bit to the pumpkin and make it coordinate with the whole setup. Now we're going to add our Mod Podge just on these raised sections. Add a good coat and then let it dry before the next part. Now we're going to make some simple ribbons to go on these pumpkins, and so I'm just using the tins to size up how big I want them. And I'm doing the same method as I've done in a couple of previous videos. I'm taking the wired ribbon, cutting the edges off, and cutting the ribbon into strips. The first ribbon I cut, I'm going to do 3 really skinny strips. That's for the smallest pumpkin. Then I use a small piece of pipe cleaner to twist around that and cut the ends and just tuck those in, and I cut the ends at an angle. Then I'm going to stick them underneath something heavy because that ribbon's kind of at the end of the roll, and so you see as I cut it, it's really curly. So I'm trying to get rid of a little bit of that curl. So this second bow, I do the same thing. Pinch it in the middle, add that piece of pipe cleaner, twist it, cut any excess off, cut those ends, and then the same thing for the last one. After I get them done, I just put them under something heavy to make them a little bit flatter for us to use. So next I get out my little iron, and I'm going to iron these pieces on and just put an extra piece of paper on top. That way I don't get any of that melted Mod Podge on my iron. And just put these pieces on, and these actually stick really well when you do this method. Get all these ironed on. After we do that, we are going to do a layer of Mod Podge on top of the paper to seal that. So here I'm just adding the layer of Mod Podge onto each of those sections, and I do have a couple of bubbles that pop up, so I take my finger and kind of rub that gently, and then I go in with a pin and kind of poke a hole without tearing the paper, and that helps for the bubbles to be able to go away. And we're just going to add a piece of that extra black and white ribbon on the top of that pumpkin, and then put that aside. And now I'm going to go ahead and put the bows on all of these. Trim them up as needed. Because of the ribbon is cut, they tend to fray a little bit, and that's okay. That's kind of the look that we're going for. And these bows have flattened out enough, and part of it is I'm turning them upside down, so they all looks the same. So I'm just going to stack this one inside, and it sits perfectly right on top of the base. And I put some glue down on the bottom, and then I want to hold these together a little bit more. So I put some E6000 in there and some hot glue and kind of hold it. That actually takes a couple times to get that to hold. But what I didn't notice while I was doing this is that pumpkin is a little off kilter. It's not standing up straight, but that's okay. I end up fixing that in the end. Then I decide I've got some of this gray faux berries and leaves that kind of go with the theme of this, so I add a little bit of each of that onto each of the pumpkins, and then in the end I do put some gray leaves and berries underneath the one pumpkin that's not sitting up straight. And I am pretty pleased with the way this one turned out. And here is our finished project, all ready to go.